Derogatory remarks and stern admonitions had turned into a regular occurrence at Harbor de Lille. Yet today, a transformation was on the horizon. When a dedicated waitress faced humiliation from a callous manager in front of customers, she responded as she always did, by enduring the pain and continuing her work. It felt like yet another day in her own torment, until out of nowhere, a man rose to his feet. He approached the manager with a calm confidence, his movements deliberate and unhurried. As he unveiled his true identity, the atmosphere of the cafe transformed completely. The balance of power shifted, and everything would be irrevocably altered from that moment onward. On a brisk autumn morning in Chicago, the streets buzzed with the familiar cadence of the city coming to life. The warm glow of the dawn sun stretched shadows across the pavement, shimmering against the expansive glass facades of Harbor de Lille, a quaint yet lively breakfast cafe tucked away amidst the soaring office towers. The aroma of freshly baked bread, crispy bacon, and robust coffee wafted through the air, enticing early morning workers, college students, and retirees seeking their daily infusion of comfort before tackling the day ahead. Within the cafe, Naomi Carter, a 34-year-old single mother, navigated the space with a calm and purposeful grace behind the counter. She had spent 4 years in this position. Since her husband left her and their 4-year-old daughter, Amari, life had been a challenge, yet Naomi had mastered the art of bearing her burdens with elegance. She dedicated herself fully, managing demanding hours while nurturing her daughter, striving to make sure Amari never sensed the void of a father. Regardless of her fatigue, she consistently wore a gentle smile for patrons, offered kind words to her colleagues, and exhibited a quiet strength that set her apart, even if it went unnoticed by others. Harbor de Lille was beginning to bustle with the familiar morning throng. In the bustling cafe, professionals in tailored suits focused intently on their laptops, while a lively group of college students gathered in a cozy corner, animatedly discussing their latest adventures over pricey lattes. Nearby, an elderly couple enjoyed a quiet moment together, sharing a plate of toast in a serene atmosphere. The murmur of chatter intertwined with the sound of dishes clinking and the gentle hiss of the espresso machine, crafting a well-known melody of the morning hustle. Naomi had company in navigating the turmoil. Lisa, a 19-year-old college student juggling a part-time job, zipped between tables with a notepad in hand, her movements a bit awkward yet filled with enthusiasm. Having just started at the cafe a month ago, she was still navigating the intricacies of her new role, her hands occasionally shaking as customers snapped their orders at her. Then there was David, 21, fresh to the role, possessing a calm presence and a sincere wish to excel, even if his deliberate approach occasionally tested the patience of the more hurried patrons. Lisa and David admired Naomi, not solely for her experience, but also for her unique willingness to mentor them without any judgment. She possessed a remarkable ability to intervene during their missteps, rectifying errors with a grace that left their dignity intact. Frequently, when their manager, Victor Barnes, was in one of his moods, Naomi would step in to take the blame for their mistakes, protecting them from his biting remarks. Victor was a man in his late 40s, his face often set in a frown, and his voice resonated throughout the cafe like a judge's gavel striking the bench. He governed his modest territory with an unyielding grip, issuing commands, observing every action, and ensuring that all were aware of his authority. He had a particular tendency to target Naomi, not due to any lack of ability on her part, but because he was aware she would not retaliate. To him, she was merely another expendable employee, someone unlikely to question his dominance. This morning unfolded just like any other. The excitement was palpable as the orders started pouring in, overwhelming the small team in a whirlwind of activity. Amidst the flurry of bustling activity, Lisa inadvertently handed the incorrect order to a middle-aged businessman positioned by the window. The man, clad in a luxurious navy blue suit and adorned with a gold watch, grimaced at the dish before him, as though it were a plate of roadkill served up for dinner. "I didn't order this," he said, irritation creeping into his voice. Lisa's eyes grew large with fear. "I sincerely apologize, sir. I will address it immediately." Before she could escape to the kitchen, Victor descended upon her with the precision of a hawk eyeing its target. For heaven's sake, Lisa, how difficult can it be to follow an order? He erupted, his voice resonating through the cafe, capturing the attention of half the patrons. It's been a month since you arrived, and mistakes are still happening. If you're unable to manage a straightforward task, perhaps it's best to reconsider your position. Lisa stood still, her cheeks flushing with color, her hands shaking as she gripped her notepad tightly. The businessman squirmed in his chair, evidently taken aback by the unexpected eruption over what seemed like a trivial matter. A handful of patrons glanced over, their voices hushed as they exchanged quiet words. David, positioned behind the counter, cast his gaze downward, as if wishing to avoid becoming the next target of Victor's fury. Naomi noticed the turmoil reflected in Lisa's gaze and moved closer without a moment's pause. "My apologies, sir," she said, her tone steady and composed, as she gracefully removed the wrong plate from the table. "I'll ensure your order is accurate immediately." Then she turned to Victor, her tone both respectful and resolute. "I take full responsibility. I ought to have prompted Lisa to verify the order before presenting it." Victor fixed her with a piercing look, his lips twisting in contempt. "Oh, naturally," he scoffed. "You're always so eager to accept responsibility, aren't you, Naomi? Constantly stepping in to rescue these kids who ought to be more aware." Naomi maintained a calm facade, even as her stomach churned with unease. She understood the direction this was taking. Victor seized every opportunity to undermine her. "Do you realize what your issue might be?" he persisted, his tone laced with superiority. "Your focus on nurturing everyone around you is admirable, but let's remember that this is a workplace, not a childcare center. It's no surprise that things are chaotic for you. If you could focus a bit more, perhaps you wouldn't find yourself in a job with no future." A thick hush enveloped the cafe. Lisa appeared utterly horrified, her gaze flitting anxiously between Naomi and Victor. David's hands balled into fists at his sides, his jaw set in determination. The businessman squirmed in his seat, a wave of regret washing over him for having brought the spotlight onto himself. Yet Victor had more to say. His eyes sparkled with a sinister light, and the next words that escaped his lips pierced through Naomi's heart like a sharp dagger. "It's hard to imagine you managing to guide a few lost kids. Yet you want me to think you're handling parenthood solo? Let's be honest, Naomi. If managing your job is a struggle, what leads you to believe you can take on the responsibilities of motherhood? It seems there's a lack of paternal presence and a genuine family framework. Am I right? Your child is likely full of energy, just as you once were," he said with a hint of irony. "Without a father, her prospects seem bleak. She'll find herself in a situation much like yours, struggling to get by, hoping for a savior to come along." The words struck Naomi with the force of a freight train. Her heart raced within her chest, her throat constricting, yet she summoned the strength to remain calm. She would not allow him to witness the hurt he had just caused. She ought to have voiced her thoughts. She ought to have stood up for herself, for her daughter. Yet what words could she find? This job was essential for her. If she were to lose it, how would she manage to continue paying rent? How would she provide for her family? The injustice of it all pressed down on her, yet she compelled herself to push it aside. In a cozy corner booth of the cafe, a man observed the scene with quiet intensity as he placed his coffee cup gently on the table. His deep brown eyes, keen with insight, narrowed just a bit as he watched the exchange unfold. In contrast to the other patrons, he was not merely a bystander experiencing vicarious unease. He was Jordan Mitchell, and what remained a secret to everyone in this room, even to Victor, was that Jordan was far more than just an ordinary customer. He held the position of CEO at Harbor Deli. Naomi swallowed hard, her heartbeat echoing in her ears as Victor's words lingered in the atmosphere. A foul presence that no amount of freshly baked bread or coffee could conceal. She sensed the weight of every gaze in the cafe upon her, some laced with pity, others steeped in discomfort, opting for silence instead of action. Lisa remained motionless next to her, her lower lip quivering, her hands balled into tense fists. David, still stationed behind the counter, had become tense, his jaw clenched in a struggle against rising frustration. Yet silence reigned. Victor faced no opposition. No one has ever done that. Naomi found herself in familiar territory once again. Varied vocabulary, diverse environments, identical sensation, the profound, painful ache of being belittled, as though her challenges were a defect, as if her identity as a single mother rendered her inferior. She had mastered the art of acceptance, of digesting it all, allowing it to slide off her back as she pressed onward. She had bills to settle and a child to nurture. She simply couldn't risk losing her job due to her pride. Yet today, there was an unmistakable shift. With the tray firmly held in her hands, she steadied herself, her gaze drawn to something flickering at the edge of her sight. A man, tall and dark-skinned, dressed with an understated elegance that exuded a sense of quiet authority rather than the ostentation of a businessman seeking attention. He lingered in the corner, a quiet presence, nursing his coffee and taking in the scene around him. Now he wasn't merely observing, he was intently watching. His eyes, keen and resolute, fixed on Victor with a focus that sparked a moment of doubt in the manager's expression. Naomi was unaware of his identity, yet the way he maintained a composed demeanor and wore an inscrutable expression signaled that he was more than just an ordinary patron. Victor, reveling in the thrill of his own malice, seemed either oblivious or indifferent to the consequences. He let out a sharp breath and shook his head, an expression of dramatic disappointment spreading across his features. "That's the issue with individuals such as yourself," he murmured, his tone soft yet sharp. "Perpetually seeking justifications, perpetually seeking understanding. However, reality doesn't operate in that manner, Naomi. No one is coming to rescue you." A spark of anger ignited within Naomi's chest. Before she had the chance to formulate a response, a deep, measured voice sliced through the room with precision. "Pardon me." All at once, the cafe fell into a hushed stillness. The customers, who had been feigning disinterest, now completely shifted their attention. Lisa stepped back, her eyes widening in surprise. Victor tensed momentarily, surprised by the sudden disruption. The figure in the corner rose, placing his coffee cup down with a measured, unhurried grace. He refined the cuffs of his suit jacket, his actions fluid, exact, deliberate. He strode ahead, narrowing the gap between himself and Victor with an assurance that spoke of a man accustomed to wielding authority. Naomi paused, her breath caught in her throat as the unfamiliar figures loomed just a few feet away. His expression stayed calm, inscrutable, yet there was an undeniable quiet authority in his eyes that required no proclamation to be acknowledged. Victor cleared his throat, adjusting his stance with purpose. "How may I assist you?" The man observed him for a moment before he began to speak, his voice steady and composed, yet tinged with an undeniable strength. "I would like to request a conversation with your manager. Please." Victor emitted a soft scoff, folding his arms across his chest. "You're gazing upon him." The man gave a subtle nod, as though he were cataloging the information in his mind. He cast a fleeting look at Naomi, his eyes resting on her for a moment before shifting back to Victor. "Well," he remarked with a certain ease, "could you clarify your reasoning behind considering it appropriate to address your employees in that manner?" A noticeable change swept across Victor's expression. His eyes flickered with a hint of annoyance, perhaps, or the dawning awareness that this was more than just another customer voicing a complaint. "I don't see how that's any of your concern," he remarked, his tone softening slightly. The man inclined his head ever so slightly. "Indeed, I believe it is." With an effortless grace that suggested a deep familiarity with command, he reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved a small leather card holder. With a deft motion, he opened it and raised it slightly, ensuring that only Victor could catch a glimpse. In an instant, the card stripped the color from Victor's face, leaving him pale and shaken. His arms, previously folded in resistance, gradually unfolded. His mouth, poised to unleash another biting response, snapped closed. The silence that ensued lingered, allowing Naomi to catch the distant hum of the espresso machine continuing its work behind her. The man gently tucked the card holder away, sliding it back into the depths of his pocket. "Allow me to present myself," he stated, his tone remaining steady, yet now infused with undeniable command. "I am Jordan Mitchell. I hold the position of CEO at Harbor Deli. At this moment, I find myself deeply disheartened by what I have just observed." A shared silence enveloped the cafe. Naomi sensed a palpable change in the atmosphere, as though every person present had collectively understood that they were now observers of an event far more significant than a mere dispute in the office. Victor parted his lips, only to seal them once more. A droplet of perspiration gathered at his temple. He gulped, clearly struggling to regain his composure. "My apologies, I was unaware." Jordan raised a hand, interrupting him in the middle of his sentence. "No," he replied plainly. "You didn't." The command in his voice was unmistakable. It wasn't brought up. It lacked aggression, and yet it demanded complete stillness. Naomi, still reeling, hardly noticed how Lisa's gaze flitted between her and Jordan, as if she were struggling to comprehend the unfolding scene. Even David, who had remained quiet throughout, appeared taken aback. Jordan glanced at Naomi, a hint of warmth flickering in his gaze. "Miss Carter," he said, employing her last name with a formality that took her by surprise. "I sincerely apologize for the challenges you've faced here today." Naomi parted her lips to reply, yet silence enveloped her. After an extended period, she found herself utterly bewildered. Jordan resumed, redirecting his attention to Victor. "Your conduct was not just unprofessional. It was entirely unacceptable. I refuse to let someone like you keep running one of my stores." His voice remained steady, yet there was an unmistakable finality to his words that allowed for no negotiation. Victor appeared as though he had just ingested shards of glass. "Excuse me, if you would be so kind as to, your services are no longer required." The words flowed with an unwavering conviction, creating a moment where it felt as though time itself had come to a standstill. Victor stumbled backward, his eyes wide and blinking furiously. "Hold on, that's not possible." "I just did," Jordan replied with a calm demeanor. "I recommend you depart immediately, lest I have to call security to assist you in leaving." For the first time since beginning his journey at Harbor Deli, Victor Barnes found himself at a loss for words. The audience, previously tense with anticipation, gradually shifted into soft conversations, exchanging knowing looks, while a few murmured their approval, and soon, one person began to applaud. It began with a measured pace, filled with uncertainty. Then another one chimed in, and yet another. Before Naomi could fully grasp the situation, she found herself surrounded by the sound of applause echoing through the cafe. Victor's face flushed with anger, yet he found himself with no alternative. His dignity in ruins, he charged toward the door, flinging it open with such force that the bells above clanged wildly. And just like that, he vanished into thin air. Naomi remained motionless, her breath quick and shallow, her thoughts racing to comprehend the events that had just unfolded. Gradually, she pivoted to confront Jordan Mitchell, the individual who had recently transformed it all. For a brief instant, everyone stood still. The cafe, once alive with hushed conversations and soft gasps of astonishment, now seemed to stand still in time. The only sound lingered in the air, a fading echo of applause, the distant hum of coffee machines, and the gentle chime of the door as it closed behind Victor Barnes, marking his final departure from Harbor Deli. Naomi remained utterly still, her breath caught in her throat. She found herself questioning whether she still had the ability to recall it. Her hands, once clutching the tray with such intensity that her knuckles had paled, gradually relaxed their grip. Her whole being was caught in a paradox, a sensation of burning heat intertwined with an icy chill, her heartbeat echoing in her ears, the gravity of recent events bearing down on her with an overwhelming force she had not anticipated. Victor had departed, dismissed in an instant, at the behest of Jordan Mitchell, the CEO. Felt surreal. She raised her gaze, seeking something to ground her in the present, and spotted Lisa beside her, appearing dazed. Her lips parted as if she were still grappling with the events that had just transpired. The younger girl's large, brown eyes darted between Naomi and Jordan, then returned to the door, as if she were half hoping Victor would burst back in and declare it all a terrible prank. Yet he chose not to. Across the counter, David appeared equally taken aback, his typically composed exterior shattered by an expression that seemed to blend disbelief with a hint of relief. His arms, once stiff at his sides during Victor's verbal onslaught, gradually relaxed, fingers stretching as if releasing the tension that had confined him. He exhaled sharply, an uneven breath that revealed he hadn't noticed he'd been holding it for far too long. What about Naomi? She found herself uncertain about her emotions. She ought to have felt a sense of relief. She ought to have felt elated that the man who had turned her existence into a nightmare was at last out of her life. She ought to have experienced a sense of triumph or, at the very least, a feeling of justification. Yet, what enveloped her was an overwhelming sense of numbness. For the last 4 years, she had come to accept the injustice, to bear it with resilience. She had mastered the art of silence, of avoiding disruption, of never standing her ground. Fighting back came with the cost of losing it all, her job, her stability, her means to provide for Amari. In just a matter of moments, another had stepped up to champion her cause. A person of influence. A person in a position of power. A person who had completely transformed her entire existence. Her hands quivered at her sides, yet when she finally found her voice, it emerged softer than she had hoped. I do not. She took a deep breath, grappling with her swirling emotions, before her gaze met Jordan Mitchell's again. I find myself puzzled. Jordan's gaze mellowed, just a touch. It was the first time Naomi had ever experienced someone gazing at her in such a way. Not with pity, not with disappointment, not with indifference, but with a sense of understanding. I believe you do, he remarked, his voice calm and unwavering, the sort that could capture attention without ever needing to rise in volume. Naomi sensed a constriction in her throat. She averted her gaze, her eyes fluttering as she struggled to inhale deeply, taking one breath, then another. Lisa ultimately discovered her voice, albeit it was scarcely more than a murmur. Is this truly unfolding before our eyes? She gazed at Jordan, her expression caught in a delicate balance of wonder and fear. Is he actually fired? Jordan gave a single nod. Absolutely. Lisa released a laugh tinged with disbelief, carrying a hint of hysteria, as if she remained unconvinced that this wasn't just an intricate joke. She pressed her hand against her mouth, her shoulders quivering ever so slightly. For a fleeting moment, Naomi felt the sting of tears, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming release of long-held fear finally dissipating. David, who had remained quiet throughout, let out a breath through his nose and slowly shook his head, his lips forming a firm line. He murmured, almost to himself, that he never imagined anyone would dare to stand up to him. Jordan examined them intently, his deep-set eyes moving over their expressions, as if assessing the extent of the harm that had occurred prior to his arrival. His gaze held a certain calculating quality, not devoid of warmth, but rather analytical, as if he were already mentally reorganizing the fragments of a shattered system he had just discovered. "Can I ask you something?" Jordan inquired, his voice contemplative as he gazed at Naomi. "Was this the initial occasion he addressed you in that manner?" Naomi paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. She ought to have fabricated the truth. She ought to have agreed, pretended that this was merely a single unfortunate day, as if Victor had been a competent manager and this was just a one-off occurrence. What other words could she possibly choose? She had endured his cruelty for years, learning to accept the humiliation in silence, all to protect Lisa and David from the worst of it. Someone had to bear the burden, and it felt simpler to be the target than to risk escalating the situation. No, she ought to have fabricated the truth. Yet she chose not to. Naomi raised her chin, compelling herself to confront Jordan's gaze directly, and shared her truth with him. "No," she said softly. "It wasn't the first time." Jordan nodded, a knowing look in his eyes, as if the answer had been clear all along. He exhaled slowly, his gaze sweeping over the cafe. The patrons, while feigning interest in their discussions, couldn't help but cast furtive looks toward the counter, fully cognizant that they had just observed something far more profound than a mere workplace disagreement. Jordan glanced over his shoulder at Naomi. He murmured, "I thought so." After a brief moment of reflection, "That's precisely why I intend to make it right." Naomi's brows knitted together in a subtle expression of concern. "What needs fixing?" Jordan offered her a subtle, understanding smile. "This place," he stated plainly, "and your part in it." Her stomach twisted with an indescribable sensation, a mix of trepidation, anticipation, and skepticism, all intertwined. Jordan's eyes locked onto hers for an extended moment before he finally broke the silence. His voice laced with undeniable conviction. "You are more than just a member of the team, Naomi. You possess the qualities that sustain and nurture environments like this. You educate individuals. You safeguard them. You shoulder burdens that aren't yours to bear, all in the name of harmony." He inclined his head just a fraction. "That's more than simply being an effective employee. That exemplifies true leadership." Naomi's breath caught in her throat. Jordan adjusted his posture, his demeanor shifting back to a more professional tone. "My role extends beyond simply dismissing ineffective managers, Miss Carter. I'm on a quest to discover the ideal individuals to guide, and I've observed closely enough to realize that you are that person." The space abruptly seemed constricted. The atmosphere is lacking in density. Naomi shook her head, taking a small step back. She paused, her heart racing, hands shaking, before she compelled herself to regain control. "I'm unsure about how to approach that." Jordan smiled once more, yet this time it carried a different essence. Not merely uplifting, but assured, unequivocal. "Indeed, you certainly do." For the first time, Naomi found herself questioning whether he might actually be right. Naomi sensed the floor shift beneath her, as if the very space around her was bending to an unseen force. Her heart raced fiercely within her chest, leaving her to ponder whether those around her could perceive its frantic rhythm. The words Jordan had just uttered, words that seemed utterly implausible, lingered in the atmosphere like a dare, poised for her to either embrace them or flee. She felt unprepared for what lay ahead. It was impossible for her to be. Is it possible for her? Lisa was the first to respond. The younger girl gasped, her hands instinctively rising to cover her mouth, as if she had just received the most astonishing news imaginable. Her wide, disbelieving eyes flitted between Jordan and Naomi, then returned to Jordan, and for a brief moment, it appeared as if she had lost the ability to articulate her thoughts. David, positioned just behind the counter, gazed at Naomi in silent astonishment, yet unlike Lisa, he remained unfazed. His lips parted slightly, as if words were on the brink of escape, yet he simply nodded once, resolutely, as though he had finally connected the dots in his mind that had been waiting to be acknowledged. Naomi, however, could only shake her head, her body revealing her inner turmoil before she could even articulate her denial. "This," she breathed out forcefully, her hand shaking as it ran through her curls, seeking to hold onto something that felt coherent. "An error has occurred. I'm uncertain about how to take on the role of a manager. Jordan stood firm. His expression stayed serene, steadfast, as if he had anticipated her response all along. "For years you've been at the helm of this place, Naomi," he remarked plainly. "You simply lacked the designation." Naomi felt a knot in her stomach. She felt the urge to contest, to assert that he was mistaken, to bring to his attention that her sole focus had been on enduring, maintaining a low profile, fulfilling her responsibilities, and striving to preserve the fragile sense of stability she had managed to hold onto. Yet, beneath the surface, she understood that he spoke the truth. How often had she found herself training new employees due to Victor's reluctance to do so? How often had she lingered after hours to correct scheduling errors that seemed to matter little to him? How often had she calmed irate customers, shielded Lisa and David, accepted responsibility for issues that weren't even hers, all to ensure this place continued to thrive? She swallowed hard, her gaze darting to Lisa, who was now nodding vigorously, as if attempting to force the idea into Naomi's mind. "Oh my goodness, Naomi, you absolutely must do this," Lisa exclaimed, her voice filled with exhilaration. "This is absolutely unbelievable. This is truly remarkable. You possess all the necessary skills, and your genuine concern for us is evident. You handle our mistakes with patience rather than anger." David discovered his voice at last, his rich baritone unwavering as he articulated his thoughts. "She's right," he stated, his eyes fixed on Naomi's, steady yet resolute. "Your guidance has been a constant since my very first day here." He tilted his head slightly, revealing that you simply lacked the strength to improve the situation. At this moment you possess that knowledge. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. She felt compelled to express that they were mistaken, that she lacked the qualities of a leader, that she lacked the strength, that she was not. A recognizable voice, soft yet brimming with warmth, unexpectedly pierced through the turmoil in her mind. "Mother?" Naomi pivoted abruptly, her heart racing as she caught sight of a petite silhouette by the counter, cradling a plastic cup of orange juice with both hands, a backpack casually draped over one shoulder. Amari. At a corner table, her 8-year-old daughter swung her legs beneath her chair, blissfully oblivious to the significance of the moment unfolding around her. Naomi felt a tightness in her chest. On a Saturday morning, Amari had been left in the care of EMS Reynolds, their elderly neighbor, who looked after her on weekends whenever Naomi had a long shift at work. For years, this was their familiar pattern. Miss Reynolds would take Amari to the cafe after breakfast, allowing her to tackle her homework in a cozy corner booth while Naomi wrapped up her shift. Yet today, there was an unmistakable shift. She was anticipating her mother's arrival. She was observing her. Lisa instinctively took a step back, allowing Naomi some space, while David stood motionless, observing silently, aware that this moment transcended their individual experiences. Naomi knelt, striving to maintain a smile even as turmoil churned within her. "Hey, darling," she whispered gently. "You've already polished off your pancakes?" Amari tilted her head, casting a quick glance at Jordan, then at Lisa, and finally at the bustling crowd of customers who were feigning disinterest, before returning her gaze to her mother. "What's going on?" she inquired, her tone brimming with authentic intrigue. Naomi paused, looking up at Jordan, who simply lifted an eyebrow, as if to encourage her to continue to share her thoughts. She glanced over her shoulder at her daughter. How was she meant to articulate this? How could she possibly convey to Amari that the mother she had always known, the one who toiled through double shifts, returned home weary, and dedicated countless nights to ensuring her daughter never bore the burden of their hardships, was now being offered something beyond that, a grander vision, a more refined option? Naomi swallowed thickly, struggling to articulate her thoughts. "And then, before she could intervene, I found myself promoted." The moment the words escaped her lips, she sensed it. A change occurred. A resolution has been reached. Amari's face brightened, her small hands gripping the cup of orange juice tightly, and in the blink of an eye, she propelled herself forward, encircling her mother's neck with all the strength her little frame could muster. "That's absolutely amazing," Amari exclaimed, her voice brimming with genuine delight. Naomi stifled a laugh, instinctively pulling her daughter close, gripping her tightly. In an instant it all fell into place. She was not merely pursuing this promotion for her own benefit. She was doing it for Amari, to Lisa, to David, for each individual in this cafe who had ever experienced the sensation of being insignificant, unnoticed, or lacking in strength. As she finally released her grip, Amari's smile was radiant, her tiny hands holding onto Naomi's fingers. "Are we going to have a celebration for this?" Naomi released a breathless laugh, caught between disbelief and a flicker of something perilously akin to hope. "Indeed, darling," she murmured. "I believe it does." Lisa erupted with an enthusiastic cheer, practically buzzing with energy, while David simply beamed, a true, heartfelt smile that Naomi had never witnessed from him before. Then Jordan, observing quietly, finally broke the silence. "Greetings, Miss Carter, and welcome to the realm of management." Naomi gazed up at him, her daughter firmly grasping her hand, Lisa radiating joy beside her, while David remained unwavering as ever. And this time, when she nodded, she truly embraced it. She was meant to be here. She always possessed that quality. Come along and connect with us as we share impactful narratives by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. Remember to activate the notification bell to begin your day with deep insights and genuine compassion.